Hey, how's it going, everyone? Rennick here, and I made an attempt to beat Pokemon Violet using only Gen 9 Pokemon. This was an interesting challenge, and oh my gosh, the cutscenes and dialogue in this game are extremely long. Anyways, the rules for this challenge will be down below in the description. Now let's get started. I start off by picking Fuecoco as my starter and name him Reaper. I then battle Pneumonia and beat her and her stupid cat. I then catch a Lechonk and name him Mr. Pig. I then find Meridian on a beach and give it a sandwich. I then follow Meridian through the cave and Houndoom shows up, and obviously we can't beat this thing. Meridian jumps in and saves us. We then walk up to this lighthouse and meet Arvin. He freaks out about Meridian being out and decides to give us him, but battles us to test our worthiness. Whatever the heck that means, you self-righteous loser. I then beat him pretty easily. I then catch a Strudel and name her Stella. I then battle Pneumonia, and this fight actually took me by surprise. I start off with Stella and she starts with Sprigatito. Stella is able to handle Leaf Age and hits it with Acid Spray, which does okay damage. Sprigatito then lands a bite that ends up being critical and gets a flinch off. What the heck is this early game match? I then switch into Reaper and she goes for Tail Whip. She goes for a bite again and gets another fetching flinch. What the heck? She goes for Tail Whip again and Reaper kills her with Ember. Thank goodness. Pommy then comes out and I switch into Mr. Pig and she Terra Crystallizes. Now keep in mind that I am primarily playing blindly, so there's no way for me to know about this. So one Thundershock brought Mr. Pig to 7 HP. So I had no choice but to keep Mr. Pig in and he died to Thundershock. Reaper comes out, Thundershock brings him down to 6 HP and Ember brings her down a little. I then switch to Stella just for her to die to Thundershock. Reaper comes back, but falls to Thundershock as well. So round 2, I grinded my team up some more this time and Stella outspeeds Sprigatito and does a lot more damage. After a second Acid Spray, Sprigatito dies. Pommy comes out. This time I'm in a better position. Stella outspeeds and uses Bite, doing about half, which is pretty good. A second bite is enough to finish the job. As I get closer to the school, I run into Team Star and whoop their butts. After the first grunt, I get the Terror Orb. After beating the second grunt, I spent time in the school. I talk to Pneumonia, who tells me about the Champion Challenge thing. Next, I talk to Arvin, who wants me to help him fight the Titan Pokemon. I then get a mystery call from a random person who wants me to take down Team Star. Clavel then talks to me for a bit. I then meet the professor, who's too busy to meet me in person. I then am able to ride Meridian and catch a Smoliv and a Mastiff. I then take on Gym Leader Katie. She was pretty easy. Reaper pretty much slaughtered her team. Afterwards, while continuing, Reaper evolves. I then discovered that both Mastiff and Smoliv were from the same route, so I chose to keep Mastiff. I then catch a Wattrel from a Crystal Cave. I also catch a Paldean Tauros. I then take on Gym Leader Artazon. Stella kills his first 2 Pokemon without issues. Sudowoodo comes out. Stella is able to get a Leer off, but falls to Rock Throw. Reaper comes in. He's able to take a Rock Throw and finish off Sudowoodo. I then fought a Team Star Grunt for the Fire Squad, and that was a mistake because the Mastiff died. I then take on Titan Cloth. Meridian then gained the ability to dash. I then catch a Charcadet and catch a Neclee. I then take on Team Star's Dark Crew. I start off with Tauros and use Work Up to set up its attack. Bruce outspeeds the Poniard and is able to take an Aerial Ace that ended up being critical, which also activated Tauros' Anger Point ability, boosting its attack more. Tauros then kills Poniard with Double Kick. Tauros gives off good damage onto Revavroom. I switch into Reaper to finish the job. Next, I take on the next Titan Pokemon, Bombardier. This one was really annoying to fight against as it was very bulky. Neclee and Mr. Pig take it down to then enter Phase 2. Oh, also Mr. Pig had evolved and I forgot to record that. My bad. For Phase 2, I switch to Neclee to Skylar, the Wattrel, and Terra Crystallize her and use Spark, which does okay damage. I then switch into Mr. Pig, who eventually takes the Titan down. With Meridian being able to ride on water, I'm now able to pass the fire crew. I then catch a Finizen. Neclee also evolves. Pneumonia wants to have another Pokemon battle. Rockruff dies to Mr. Pig out and dies to Mr. Pig as well. Florigato comes out, so I switch to Reaper to take care of it. Afterwards, Skylar the Watchwell evolves into Killer Watchwell. I then challenge Iono, and this was also a bad run of luck. I start off with Thing, the Knuckle stack. The first smackdown isn't able to kill her Watchwell. She uses Spark again and it paralyzes Thing. Thing is then too paralyzed to land the second smackdown. Bruh. So the third one is able to do the job. Billy Bolt comes out next and this thing is stupidly bulky and nearly kills Thing. I switch into Mr. Pig and he also gets paralyzed, which causes Mr. Pig to only be able to get off one dig before falling. Reaper is then able to finish Belly Bolt to then get paralyzed by Luxio. After 2 incinerates, Luxio dies. She then brings out Miss Magius and I switch into Bruce. Miss Magius also just trolls on me by confusing Bruce. Bruce then falls to Miss Magius, leaving me with team members weak to electric and are paralyzed and close to death. So I had to attempt again. This time I came with cherry berries. While grabbing berries, I found a shiny Tarantula and caught it. I then re-challenge Iono. This time Thing is able to kill her Watchwell without getting paralyzed. It gets a mud shot off on Belly Bolt before having to switch. I then bring out Mr. Pig, who's able to kill Belly Bolt and Luxio without any issues. Miss Magius comes out. Mr. Pig is low on health and gets confused and hurts himself. At this point, I had no choice but to sacrifice Mr. Pig. Mr. Pig, you fought a good fight. I bring Thing out hoping he could take her attacks, but also falls. I then bring out Reaper, and let me just say, Reaper is an absolute beast. Despite being confused, he's able to land Incinerate and tank a Hex, landing another Incinerate to then get confused again and finish the job with a third Incinerate. I then catch a Cyclozar and take on the fire crew. Mello starts off with Torkoal and gets a Drought off. I start off with Valkyrie, the Char Cadet. After 3 Nightshades, Torkoal goes down. She brings out the Starmobile. I switch to Dory, the Finizen, but because of the Drought, water type moves are pretty useless. Dory then sadly falls to the Starmobile. I bring out Skylar to try and paralyze the Starmobile, but it didn't work. So I switched to Draco. Draco is able to get some chipping in, but I needed to switch. So here comes Reaper. Reaper gets a good amount of damage out, and I switch back into Valkyrie, predicting the fire type move. I switch to Bruce, predicting that she'll use a non-fire type move. Bruce gets good chipping before also dying. Draco comes out and gets off a bite before I switch into Valkyrie for flash fire again. Valkyrie is then able to beat the Starmobile. I then go to the Asado Desert and find a Tink Tank and catch it. I also catch a Clodsire. Tinker evolves into Tinkatuff. I then get the Malicious Armor and use it on Valkyrie, who evolves into Server Ledge. I then find a Water Paldean Taurus and catch it. I then battle the assistant of the 4th generator. I then give Kofu his wallet and win him some seafood. Next I have my gym battle with him. I start off with Draco to set up Sunny Day. I then use U-turn to get good damage and to switch into Valkyrie. She then kills Veluza with Shadow Claw. Bug Trio comes out and lands a Water Pulse, which doesn't do much damage thanks to Sunny Day and dies to Solar Blade. Crabominable comes out and almost kills Valkyrie, and she almost kills it with Solar Blade. I then bring Lee out to get Intimidate off and to tank the attack. Skylar then comes out and finishes off the Crabominable, allowing me to defeat Kofu. I then swap Reaper and Valkyrie. After Kofu, I took on the Earthworm Titan. I start off with Draco to set up a Sunny Day. I then bring Reaper out, who beats Earthworm with 1 Incinerate. Arvin shows up and round 2 begins. Pretty much same thing happens. Meridian is then able to jump higher. I then take on the Team Star's Poison Crew. I start off by beating a Fanboy and beating up the Grunts. I then battle Atticus. He starts off with Skunk Tank and I start off with Bob. I get 3 spikes off and he fails 3 sucker punches, and I honestly don't know why I didn't decide to just stall him out. but Skuntank lands 2 sucker punches, doing a lot of damage on Bob. Skuntank falls to 2 bulldozes. Reverum comes out and gets hurt a little by the spikes. I switch into Lee, who gets poisoned. Well, I think we know where this is going. Luckily, I gave Lee a Pecha Berry and uses Work Up. It uses Sludge and poisons Lee, so much for the Pecha Berry. Lee gets Reverum to about half. I then switch into Reaper, who takes some hit and kills Reverum. Muck comes out and I switch to Bob. Bob eventually kills Muck. Starmobile comes out and kills Bob. I bring out Tinker to try and do some more damage, but it has Flame Charge. I switch to Skylar to try and paralyze, and surprise, surprise, it doesn't work, and Skylar dies. Bring out Draco, who does good damage, but is badly poisoned, so I switch to Tinker, then die to Flame Charge. Reaper comes out and does decent damage and falls. At this point, I have Draco and Lee left, who both would die, so gotta take the fat L and restart this run. This time I stall out the sucker punches with spikes. Skuntank uses Venom Shock and gets a flinch on Bob. Bob eventually kills Skuntank without taking much damage. Reverum comes out and gets hurt by spikes again. Reverum hits hard with an iron head and gets a flinch. Oh, what is my luck? Bob survives on 1 HP and kills Reverum. What a legend. Muck comes out and I switch to Draco. I set up Sunny Day and use U-turn and switch to Reaper. Reaper is able to kill Muck. I then switch to Lee, who does good damage and is able to survive on 2 HP. I switch to Tinker, who also does good damage, but sadly I had to sacrifice her to have a safe switch into Skylar, who's able to finish the Starmobile off. So while recording, my flash drive storing this footage had a weird glitch and this footage got corrupted. After beating Atticus, I caught a Primate since Larry is a normal type gym leader. Reaper then evolves into Skeleturg. Next I challenge Larry. It starts off with Kamala and I start off with Bob to get toxic spikes and regular spikes set up. I then switch to Valkyrie to try and burn it, but it has Comatose, and that prevents it from being affected by status. So, new plan. I use Rage Queen to kill Kamala. She then kills the Dunsparce. Staraptor comes out, and I switch to Reaper, who's able to kill Staraptor. Pneumonia then challenges me to another battle. For the most part of this battle, her team gets bodied until Meowscarada comes out. This thing became more of a menace. It kills Rage Queen, and then Draco does great damage on it, but also dies. But luckily the poison finishes off Meowscarada. I can't seem to progress without losing a Pokemon. I then find a Frigibax, catch it, and name her Elsa. After some grinding, she evolves into Arctibax. I then hype up an audience for Gym Leader Rhyme, who's a pretty sick rapper. Little did I know, though, that it was a double battle. Hug. I start off with Bob and Skylar. Bob sets up toxic spikes and Skylar paralyzes Banette. Mimikyu lands a slash on Skylar, but it wasn't anything crazy. I then paralyze Mimikyu and set up spikes. I then have Skylar use Roost to heal up, but somehow Mimikyu still goes second and lands a slash that does a little more damage than last time. Bennett then uses Icy Wind. Bob is able to avoid it, but Skylar gets hit hard due to it being critical. I then get one last layer of spikes. The crowd loves what they see and give my Pokemon stat boosts. I have Skylar use Roost again and Mimikyu just has it out for Skylar and lands another slash. Bob then removes Mimikyu's disguise with a poison jab. Bennett uses Icy Wind and it doesn't do much damage. Then Rhyme's Pokemon get boosted by the crowd. Bennett lands a Sucker Punch on Bob. Skylar kills Bennett and Bob lands a critical poison jab on Mimikyu and it's still alive. I then switch Bob with Valkyrie. Skylar then kills Mimikyu. Houndstone then uses Phantom Force and Toxtricity comes out. After Toxtricity, Terra crystallizes. I have Skylar use Roost to heal and Valkyrie use Will-O-Wisp on Toxtricity. Unfortunately, Valkyrie dies to Toxtricity's Hex and Houndstone's Phantom Force. You will be missed. I bring out Elsa and Rhyme's Pokemon gain another stat boost. Toxtricity hits hard with a Hyper Voice. Houndstone uses Phantom Force. Again, Skylar lands an Air Slash on Toxtricity and it does a lot of damage, but it still lives. Elsa sadly misses the bite. I bring Elsa back so that I don't lose my pseudo legendary. Lee comes out and Toxtricity uses Hyper Voice again, killing Skylar, another fallen strong teammate. Reaper comes out and I Terror Crystallize him to lose his ghost weakness. Toxtricity uses Hex and luckily does not kill Reaper. Reaper then kills the Toxtricity with Shadow Ball. Lee uses Work Up to increase his stats. Reaper tanks the Phantom Force and kills Helmstone with Shadow Ball. I then go to the North Providence Area 1 and catch another Tinkatuff. Fortunately, I can't use it until later on. Then catch a Bombardier. I find a Shiny Mastiff and catch it. I also catch a Lokix, and funny enough, its name becomes Loki if you remove the X. Next, it's time to battle Alfornada, except that Pneumonia wants to battle again. Leave me alone. I start off with Bob to do the usual startup. I then switch to Lee. His Intimidate pops off and she uses Sand Attack. Despite the two Sand Attacks, Lee is able to kill Lycanroc. Palmot comes out and lands a critical Spark. Luckily Lee lives but misses the Zen Headbutt. I then switch to Bob and he kills her Palmot. She brings out Slagoo and I switch into Elsa and tanks the Dragon Pulse. She then outspeeds and kills the Slagoo with Dragon Claw. Meowscarada comes out and I switch to Loki. He takes a critical slash and kills the Meowscarada with Lunge. Now I take on Alfornada. I start off with Loki who kills Barograph with 2 Throat Chops. Gardevoir comes out and I am petrified because Reaper accidentally overleveled and therefore was not allowed to be in this match, making it very hard to switch out. Therefore, Gardevoir was able to wall my team, so I thought. Loki uses the Lunge to do some damage. It does about a quarter of damage, and then he dies. I bring out Lee and use Raging Bull, getting rid of the Reflect and doing a lot of damage. Lee then lives on 1 HP. What a trooper. Finishes Gardevoir off with another Raging Bull. Pure luck. As Pathra comes out, I switch into Mary, reading the Psychic attack. Mary kills the Espathra. Florges comes out, which also is a threat with having fairy type moves. Thankfully, Mary's Terra Crystal form is flying and she's able to beat the Florges. I then catch Poniard in the 5th South area. I challenge the final gym leader, Placido. I start off with Reaper and use Will-O-Wisp, which I should have just used Torch Song. Torch Song does kill Frostmoth. Beartic comes out, outspeeds, and uses Earthquake. Luckily, Reaper lives. Lee comes in to save Reaper, and 2 double kicks takes out Beartic. Sea Titan comes out and takes forever to die, but eventually dies. Altaria comes out. Lee gets good damage in, but sadly dies to Hurricane. Barry comes in, lives an Ice Beam, and cleans up Altaria with a Rock Slide. I then catch a Veluza. After some grinding, I take on the Iron Treads Titan. Bob is able to beat Phase 1 in 1 move. In Phase 2, however, Iron Treads outspeeds and one-shots Bob with a critical hit. Aquaman then kills Iron Treads. I catch a new Kilowattrel. I then beat Ortego's dad. Next I battle Ortego, and this ended up being a lot harder. I start off with Reaper until I see his Azumarill. So I switch to Alice. I have her paralyze the Azumarill and barely survives a play rough. 1 Electro Ball is enough to finish it off. I then switch to Tough and land a fake out on the Wigglytuff. After several Metal Claws, it eventually falls. Tough is able to get some damage on the Dash Spun, but sadly dies. I bring out Reaper, but Dash Spun is immune to fire attacks, so I switch into Ace to take a crunch. Ace is able to bring Dash Spun down to the red, and I switch into Mary. Unfortunately, Mary also falls. Aquaman is then able to finish the job, so now comes out the Starmobile. Honestly, I'm so done with these things. Aquaman also dies. With some Torch Songs, Reaper is able to defeat Ortego. I then catch a Dodonzo and name him Chuck. I also catch a Glimmer in a Crystal Cave and name him Gilbert. After some grinding, Gilbert evolves, Ace evolves twice, and Elsa evolves. I then beat up a Team Star Grunt and raid their base. I then battle Aerie. Start off with Alice and she starts off with Toxicroak. Alice kills the Toxicroak with one Hurricane. Annihilate comes out. Alice paralyzes it and survives an Ice Punch. I then switch into Gilbert to get Toxic Debris to pop off. I then use Spiky Shield to bait the close combat. I then switch into Reaper, who kills the Annihilate with Hex. Lucario comes out and my only answer is to Burn Stall. Reaper survives a Dark Pulse with it being a low roll, but flinches. Gosh dang it. Reaper survives the second Dark Pulse and lands the Will-O-Wisp. I then switch in between Reaper and Ace, allowing Reaper to heal thanks to the leftovers. Lucario eventually dies. Passive Man comes out and gets poisoned. I switch to Gilbert to take the Rock Tomb. I then use Spiky Shield, predicting the close combat. I also poison stall this thing, and then the Starmobile comes out and Chuck is able to take it down. Next, I took down the False Dragon Titan, which wasn't hard. Meridian is now able to climb. Professor also calls us to go to the lab at the lighthouse and urges us to meet him in Area 0. However, there's one last thing we must do: beating the champion. Take on Rika. She starts with Cash, and I start off with Gilbert. Gilbert outspeeds and kills with Energy Ball. I Spiky Shield Donphan to see what it does. Knowing that it would go for another Earthquake, I switch to Alice. I then switch to Chuck, knowing that Donphan has a rock type move. After 2 Aqua Tails, Donphan dies. Chuck kills Dugtrio with Aqua Tail, while being close to death. Camera comes out and I switch into Alice. Elsa comes out and gets boosted from Dragon Dance and Fire Blast and kills Camerupt. Cloudsire comes out but is no match for Elsa. Poppy comes next, and I really don't understand how this toddler is an Elite 4 member. Nonetheless, she starts off with Copperajah. I start off with Gilbert. I use Spiky Shield to scout out what she uses. She uses high horsepower and hurts herself. I switch to Alice, thinking she would go for high horsepower again, but she goes for Heavy Slam, doing a lot of damage. I get the paralyze on it, but Play Rough kills Alice. Reaper comes out and just kills pretty much her whole team using the Torch Song, and it just powering up itself. It just really fast. Larry is back, but this time as a flying type user. It starts off with Tropius and it dies to Gilbert's Sludge Wave. Staraptor comes out. I use Spiky Shield, then switch to Reaper, predicting close combat and get a Will-O-Wisp and survive a Brave Bird. I switch back to Gilbert, who eventually brings Staraptor down. Altaria comes out and dies to 2 Power Gems. Oricorio comes out and hits hard. Luckily, Gilbert survives on 6 HP and kills it with Power Gem. Brings out Flamigo, and this thing is insane. It's just too hard. So the only solution is to get it to kill itself with Brave Bird. I switch to Elsa to take the Brave Bird. Predicting close combat, I switch to Reaper, who barely survives it because it has Scrappy, allowing it to hit ghost types with fighting type moves. I then sack the shiny Tarantula, allowing his Pokemon to die to its own Brave Bird. Hassel is the final Elite 4 member. He starts with Noivern, and obviously I start with Gilbert, using Spiky Shield and get damage on it. Toxic Debris gets activated and Noivern dies to Power Gem. Regalg comes out. I predict the Hydro Pump and switch to Ace to also negate any poisoning. It takes 2 Iron Heads to kill. Flapple comes out and I switch into Elsa. He sets up Leech Seed and I get Dragon Dance up. I use another Dragon Dance and survive a Dragon Rush. Go for an Avalanche, not realizing that it would make Elsa go last, causing her to die. Had I realized that, I would have just used Blade Rush or used a different ice type move. Reaper comes in, lands the Will-O-Wisp, and kills with Hex. Haxorus comes out. Reaper survives the crunch and lands a Will-O-Wisp. I then swap into Gilbert to take the crunch and use Spiky Shield. He uses Iron Head but hurts himself. I then bring Chuck out. Order Up does a good amount of damage, and after using Rest, Haxorus dies to burn. Excalibur comes out and uses a Glaive Rush, bringing Chuck below half. I switch into Ace to tank Glaive Rush and possibly kill it. Unfortunately, it has Brick Break and kills Ace. I bring Gilbert out to stall it out and it dies to poison. With only 3 usable teammates and a shiny sack, I was very nervous about this last fight with Champion Gita. That was until I realized how bad her team is. She starts off with Espathra, and I start off with Gilbert. I switch to Reaper, who then kills it. The rest of her team, except for her own Glimmer, is insanely weak to fire, and Reaper outspeeds all of them and just gets stronger. So they all just die to Reaper, making this the most underwhelming champion fight ever. Her Glimmer comes out and I switch to Chuck, who kills it with a critical Aqua Tail. This was actually a really fun challenge. Despite Gita being the weakest champion, this challenge was not easy. And I hope you all really enjoyed this video. I enjoyed doing this challenge. And if you really enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe and click that bell to be notified of the next videos. And hit that like button. With that out of the way, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace!